Viewer discretion is strongly advised before we begin. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you're about to hear is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony from the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. In the courtroom, no one expected the next witness to show up wearing a navy blue suit with a badge tucked discreetly under his lapel. But when former FBI agent Mark Halperin took the stand, a heavy silence swept the room. What he revealed wasn't just a scandal, it was a network. A system of protection so deep, it reached the highest levels of power in the United States. Yes, he named Barack Obama. The man once seen as a beacon of hope is now allegedly tied to parties, pardons, and powerful protection involving Diddy. According to Halperin, the reason Diddy remained untouchable for decades wasn't because of top-tier lawyers. It was because he was useful to the powerful. What followed was a shocking testimony that connected politics, religion, the music industry, and a silent network of control dating back to the 1990s. The courtroom was packed, but you could hear a pin drop, especially when the back doors swung open and a man in a dark suit walked in, briefcase in hand. No name was announced. No credentials were read. The judge simply nodded. That was the signal. This wasn't just any witness. This was someone who operated in the shadows, someone with access beyond the reach of any journalist or investigator. He was introduced only as Special Agent, Redacted, a high-ranking federal operative with decades of experience in the FBI's Organized Crime and Political Corruption Division. And for the first time, he was testifying under oath about one man, Sean Diddy Combs. The agent sat down, opened his briefcase, and placed a black folder on the witness stand. He didn't glance at Diddy, who sat stone-faced at the defense table, fingers clasped tightly. He didn't look at the jury either. He simply spoke. "I've been tracking Mr. Combs and his enterprise for over 2 decades. This isn't new. What's new is that we're finally allowed to talk about it." The judge gave a silent nod. The agent continued. He revealed that the FBI had launched initial inquiries into Combs as far back as the late 1990s. The red flags were always there, he said. Financial transactions that didn't make sense, exclusive parties overlapping with known trafficking networks, and overseas ties to criminal shell corporations. Every time we got close, he said, the doors slammed shut. He described one pivotal moment in 2001, an international money laundering sting involving a European affiliate of Bad Boy Records. Evidence directly connected Diddy's financial team to forged invoices, shell companies in Luxembourg and Ibiza, and suspicious overseas accounts. But when agents moved to request warrants, the order was denied, the agent said. That's when I realized we weren't just up against celebrity influence. We were facing federal interference. Gasps and whispers rippled through the courtroom. "I'm not here to push conspiracy theories," he said, steady and clear. But this wasn't some case of scared local law enforcement. This was top-down suppression, Washington-level orders telling us to back off. Files went missing. Witnesses vanished. Investigators were reassigned. What seemed like coincidence, he said, eventually revealed a pattern. The prosecution then displayed a timeline of blocked investigations spanning from 1999 to 2013. Each time Diddy was linked to serious criminal allegations, trafficking, assault, wire fraud, either the case froze, a witness disappeared, or the entire investigation was quietly buried. One juror was visibly shaken. A woman in the audience clutched her chest. This was no longer just a celebrity trial. It was the unveiling of a system built to protect power, no matter the cost. The gallery gasped. One woman covered her mouth in shock. Then came the bombshell. In 2003, the agent said, "We had reason to believe Mr. Combs was operating under an unofficial informant protection status, the kind that doesn't show up in any public records. That kind of protection only comes from very high up. And at the time, there were only 3 people in the federal government who had the power to authorize it." The room froze. Diddy didn't say a word, but the look on his face made it clear. He knew exactly who those 3 people were. Special Agent, Redacted, leaned forward, voice steady. "This is where the story changes," he said. "Because it's not just about the crimes that were committed, it's about who allowed those crimes to continue." And then, he said the name that shifted the entire atmosphere in the courtroom. That brings us to Mr. Combs' relationship with political figures at the highest levels, specifically Barack Obama. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Even the judge slowly lifted his head, narrowing his eyes. The agent opened the black folder again and lifted a series of photographs for the jury to see. The first, a grainy image from 2005, Diddy standing beside then-Senator Barack Obama at a fundraiser in Chicago. The second, from 2007, a private, off-the-books event in Washington, D.C., hosted by a powerful lobbying group with deep ties to the Democratic National Committee. Diddy wasn't listed by name, he had used an alias. But the photo left no doubt, he was there. And he wasn't alone. These weren't just photo ops, the agent said. These were closed-door meetings, sessions not recorded on the books. We believe Mr. Combs was engaged in intelligence-sharing operations, leaking information about others, trading favors, and in return, receiving protection. That's when the defense leapt to its feet. "Objection," the attorney shouted, trying to cut the agent off before he could finish the sentence. But the courtroom had already heard enough. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. This was about a network of silence, where music, politics, and power collided behind closed doors. But the prosecution stayed calm. They handed over corroborating evidence, travel logs, email metadata, and even a redacted internal memo referencing a cultural liaison meeting involving Bo and high-value entertainment assets. Then the agent spoke again, his voice firmer, more certain. "Here's what we know," he said. "In 2009, shortly after President Obama took office, our bureau submitted a wiretap request targeting Sean Combs. The goal? To intercept communications between Diddy and known narcotics traffickers who were believed to be laundering money through bad boy-affiliated production companies. The request was denied. The room stirred. A murmur passed through the gallery. Denied by who? The prosecutor asked. The agent turned to the last page in his folder, a call log from a White House-affiliated legal office. The name was redacted, but the timestamp? It matched exactly the moment the wiretap request was withdrawn. The judge quickly instructed the jury to disregard any speculation, but it was already too late. The implications weren't subtle. The timing wasn't coincidental. Somehow, a man under active federal surveillance had enough reach into the White House to shut down a wiretap request instantly. "We're not alleging President Obama personally protected Mr. Combs," the agent clarified. "But we are saying that his administration created a pipeline, a relationship, and that relationship gave Mr. Combs effective immunity for years." Reporters' pens scratched furiously. Even the court stenographer paused for a beat before continuing. This wasn't a story of Diddy being lucky. This was strategic, engineered, and enabled by power far greater than anyone in that courtroom had imagined. And that was only the beginning. The jury was leaning forward now. Pens forgotten. Eyes locked. Special Agent, redacted, had just blown open a hidden chapter of American power. And what came next changed the entire mood, from curiosity to dread. The agent held up one final image. This one wasn't grainy. It wasn't secret. It was a high-resolution photograph, taken at a private event in Martha's Vineyard. In the image stood three men, Sean Diddy Combs, former President Barack Obama, and Reverend Al Sharpton. They weren't posing. There were no press cameras. This wasn't a public appearance. It was a private, dimly lit gathering, far from any official schedule. And in that moment, the jury realized this trial wasn't just about a celebrity. It was about a system, a hidden infrastructure of power, access, and silence. The photograph was taken at a private estate, property owned by a tech billionaire with deep ties to both the entertainment industry and defense contracting firms. This was taken in 2014, the agent said. They called it a charity dinner. But what the FBI obtained, through court-approved channels, wasn't just a guest list. It was a map of hidden influence. Former CIA assets, sanctioned arms dealers, executives from TriStar Entertainment. The room erupted into whispers. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order!" The agent continued without missing a beat. Mr. Combs wasn't there as a guest. He was a conduit, delivering information from the streets of New York straight to the marble halls of political power. And in return, his sins were forgiven. A juror dropped their pen. Then came the story that made even the judge's eyes narrow. In 2012, the agent said, a trafficking sting was conducted by our Miami field office. A known associate of Mr. Combs was caught red-handed. Girls, drugs, offshore wire transfers. It was the kind of case that should have made national headlines. The agent looked up, his eyes heavy. 48 hours later, the file was sealed. The agents were reassigned. The suspect was released. The case disappeared. How? The prosecutor asked. The agent didn't pause. A single phone call. From a Capitol Hill extension. No name. No explanation. Just one call, and everything vanished. He handed over a set of internal emails and memos from agents inside the bureau. Some are baffled, others are angry, all hinting at interference from above. One line, the agent pointed out, stood alone. Don't ask why this got buried. Just be glad you're not in the room. And then, perhaps the darkest revelation yet. In 2015, the agent said, we monitored Mr. Combs's international movements closely. He traveled to Haiti, Colombia, and private Caribbean islands. At first, it looked recreational. But foreign intelligence partners began to paint a different picture. These weren't vacations, the agent said. They were meetings with cartel-connected financiers and yacht parties involving underage girls flown in from Brazil and Eastern Europe. One source claimed the girls were told they were auditioning for American Idol. The courtroom was in shock. Jurors looked visibly shaken. One woman had tears in her eyes. And still, through all of it, Sean Diddy Combs wore the mask of a mogul. The celebrity, the businessman, the icon. But behind the scenes, he moved like a ghost through systems of power, protected, connected, and untouchable. And this, the agent said as he closed the black folder, was just what they were finally allowed to reveal. He styled himself a philanthropist, a revolutionary. But behind the curtain, Sean Diddy Combs ran an empire built on fear, blackmail, and influence-bought immunity. The judge called for a recess. Spectators filed out slowly, many in stunned silence. And, for the first time since the trial began, Diddy looked like a man who realized the walls were finally closing in. When court reconvened, the gallery was subdued. This was no longer just a celebrity trial. It was a trial of the very illusion of safety, equality, and justice. Special Agent, redacted, returned to the stand, his voice heavier. We have reason to believe, he began, that a cache of surveillance tapes exists, footage recorded at multiple Combs-owned properties, some dating back to 2003. This isn't speculation. Some of those tapes briefly passed through federal hands. He clicked a remote. A projector lit up with a single frame, a time-stamped screenshot from a surveillance control room inside one of Diddy's Los Angeles estates. Monitors, over 30 of them, showed feeds from bedrooms, hallways, pools, and private studios. Many of these cameras were hidden, the agent said. The people being filmed had no idea. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. In 2016, we secured a warrant to seize 3 hard drives believed to hold this footage, he continued. But when agents arrived, the property's server room was on fire. Arson. Confirmed. The blaze began less than 20 minutes after the field office received clearance. Someone warned them, the agent said flatly. Only one drive survived, recovered from an associate's safe deposit box. Its contents, the agent hinted, were disturbing enough to warrant their own sealed hearing. The courtroom sat frozen, collectively holding its breath. And in that hush, it became clear. Behind the music, behind the mogul persona, lay a labyrinth of surveillance, leverage, and carefully orchestrated power, all finally dragged into the light. Puerto Rico, the agent said. That's where the footage came from, unedited, unfiltered, undeniable. On screen, the surveillance showed Sean Combs interacting with celebrities, business leaders, and political figures, caught in moments of extreme vulnerability. Some were visibly intoxicated. Others, the agent stated flatly, were clearly coerced. Then came the question that pierced through the silence like a blade. Was Barack Obama in those tapes? The prosecutor asked. He was not, the agent replied. But several of his close friends, donors, and political allies were. And Mr. Combs was heard referencing them, by first name. He knew their secrets. And he kept those secrets, not for memory, not for ego, but for leverage. The courtroom was silent. And then the agent said the line that would haunt the rest of the trial. Mr. Combs didn't just collect these recordings to satisfy his ego. He used them as currency, as insurance, in case anyone ever tried to cut him off. That night, every major news network broke the story. But in the shadows, in D.C., in LUA, in high-rise boardrooms and glass-walled crisis suites, the only question being asked was, how much does he really know? The next morning, court resumed under heightened security. Federal marshals lined the walls. The air was no longer tense, it was contaminated. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. This was about a system that enabled him. Special Agent, redacted, returned to the stand, carrying a sealed envelope. He approached the judge. Your Honor, I request you open this privately. Inside was a classified memo, now officially declassified for the trial. It bore the unmistakable letterhead of an agency rarely spoken aloud in court: the Central Intelligence Agency. This memo, the agent began, was authored in 2012 by a senior analyst in the CIA's Domestic Operations Division. The subject line read, "Entertainment assets, high-risk targets." The judge nodded. Grimly. The agent continued, "Beginning in the mid-2000s, Mr. Combs was flagged as a high-value cultural influencer, someone with potential for domestic manipulation. Multiple departments, Homeland Security, Financial Crimes, and Foreign Intelligence, had raised red flags: known arms traffickers, shadowy offshore bankers, intelligence-adjacent operatives from Eastern Europe and West Africa. And yet, he thrived. The CIA never formally recruited Mr. Combs," the agent said, "but they benefited from his access. His parties, his platforms, his connections. They became a behavioral goldmine, a way to gather data without leaving fingerprints. In exchange for plausible deniability," the agent said, "Mr. Combs was allowed to operate with little to no legal interference. And in that moment, it all shifted. This wasn't just the downfall of a mogul. It was the peeling back of an entire machine, a machine that knew exactly who he was and let him keep going anyway." "Are you saying the CIA let him do these things?" the prosecutor asked. The courtroom held its breath. "I'm saying," the agent replied, "the agency found his operations beneficial. They may not have sanctioned his crimes, but they certainly overlooked them." That was the moment the trial stopped being about Diddy. Because what came next cracked the courtroom wide open. The agent held up a notarized ledger, witnessed, stamped, verified. "This document," he said, "contains a list of wire transfers made by shell companies affiliated with Mr. Combs. The money didn't stop at luxury cars or music video budgets. It flowed into TriStar Entertainment, and entities tied to Britney Spears' conservatorship. It went to high-level political consultants, D.C. lobbyists, and, most chillingly, an individual linked to a Caribbean human trafficking case that mysteriously vanished from the DOJ's docket in 2015. The implication: Diddy was not a lone monster.